So tell us, what's the problem that you're trying to solve over here?
Before I do that, what does Vipul mean?
Vipul means in plenty. In plenty.
In plenty. Okay. The reason I asked that is I was recently in Rajasthan
Okay.
and I met a girl and her name was Naraz Nath.
Okay.
So I asked her, I said, why is your name Naraz? And she said, because my family was so angry when a daughter was born. I've met other girls who are named Antimbala because families hoped that that would be the last girl that would be born, or daughters who are named Achuki, the one who has arrived, right? Not wanted, but who has arrived. And that is the nature of the problem, right? Where we tell girls from the day they are born, they know that, parents had hoped there would be a son. The lust for the male child is so high that our girls, especially in rural and tribal areas, especially in certain pockets of the country, they know from day one. And that truly is, I mean, I'm just using the names as a symbol, but that's the nature of the problem. And the scale of the problem, India has the highest number of girls that are out of school. We have the highest number in terms of women who are trafficked, child marriage. You pick up any indicator in terms of gender parity, the statistics are startling.
How is Educate Girls making a difference in all of these problems that you just talked about? I mean, what is it that you're doing that kind of solves that problem? These are like huge problems that we're talking about, right? And it's essentially, world hunger, world peace kind of, scales that we are dealing with over here.
Yeah.
So how do you do that? How do you basically affect change at that scale?
Yeah, so I think the way we look at it, it's a mindset problem, right? If tomorrow India woke up and everybody magically believed that sons and daughters were equal, you wouldn't need an educate girls, and we wouldn't have a gender inequity or whatever sort of an issue. So it's all in the mind. It's kind of weird, but it's just here. This is what we believe. So what we do is, first of all, we pick which area to go into. So we look at some of the most critical gender gap areas in the country, and that's the educational gender gap, where the highest number of out of school girls are. So currently, for example, we work in MP and Rajasthan. So an MP will be in districts like Jhabua, Alirajpur, Dhar, very rural, remote, and tribal areas. And because it's a mindset problem, we actually work to create gender champions on the ground. We call them Team Balika. Balika just means the girl child. So this is a team that we're creating for the girl child to promote um, and further girls' education. And the way we do it is we'll take our critical gender gap districts and saturate it 100%, right? So if Jhabua has close to 800 villages, every single village will have a Team Balika volunteer.
And so this team Balika, is that going to be people that are coming from the outside, or are you recruiting them locally?
No, they're all from the same village. So you're looking at young, educated, passionate individuals, usually about 12th pass, who actually join us, and then we train them and mentor them.
Predominantly women?
No, the interesting thing is that we have 12,000 such volunteers on the ground right now, and 60% of them are young men. And it's so phenomenal to see a young boy stand up and say that in my village, every single girl will go to school, right? And it's the power. But see, equity is not a women's issue, it will have to be fought jointly, right? It impacts all of us.
Sure.
So we wanted that men should be as much a part of this movement with us.
And so how do you know that you're having an impact? Like what's the effect? Like, what's the the signs that things are moving in the right direction and that you've basically made a difference?
Yeah, so the way we kind of do that is like, we know that we're in some of the worst geographies, and what our Team Balika volunteers do is that they actually go door to door and they knock on every single household to find out of school girls. So just to give you a sense of the scale of it, in the last couple of years, we've knocked on over 2.1 million households. So we first and foremost establish this really clean and clear baseline, right? Are there 20,000 girls out of school? Are there 40,000? Which villages it's very high? Where is it really, where we don't have to have such a big presence? So establishing that data is really key. Because you can look at like other stats, but it won't tell you exactly and who is it that's out of school. Once that happens, then with our Team Balika volunteers, we'll sit with the village community, sarpanch, ward punch, the school administration, parents, everybody, and then convince parents to bring their girls back into school. Now, the interesting thing is sometimes it takes just a few weeks, sometimes a few months, and sometimes it takes us a few years. We recently did the development impact bond, which is like a payment by results contract for girls' education. The first time in the world, first time in education. And the interesting thing was, in the first year, most of the girls who got enrolled were between 7 to 9, right? Because they're younger, they're chotu bachas. They're like, ha, leke jao, it's okay. It took us till the second year to convert most of the girls who were over the age of 10. And it's only by the third year that we were able to bring in girls who were 13, 14 back into school. So as the girls get older, the control, the whole patriarchal mindset gets stronger and stronger to keep them away from school. So we had to build very deep relationships to be able to bring them back into the school system.
So what's the scale and size of this organization that you're talking about over here? So I mean, how big is Educate Girls really?
Yeah, so we started 10 years ago, so we're still quite young as an organization. We started with about few hundred schools in Rajasthan, but today, like this year, we're working in over 20,000 schools between Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh. Our full-time staff is around over 1,500 people, and 12,000 community workers that are Team Balika. So together, I think this year we will be working with close to 2 million children across.
Now that you've done all of this, sort of, how do you see things moving forward? Like, how, in terms of scale, in terms of size, do you see your mission in any way sort of changing over time?
So I think in the last 10 years, the mission doesn't change, right? It's staying very much focused on saying, let's find all the out of school girls, then let's do whatever it takes, right? Village meeting, neighborhood meetings, parent counseling, door to door contact, whatever it is to bring them back in. And then we make sure that they're staying in school and learning. And then for the older girls, we do a life skills program. So that doesn't change, but how we're doing it is changing dramatically. So we're using more and more technology. So all of our villages are like geotagged, right? All our data is like very quick. It comes to us from our smartphone. We have our own app so that our response system can be a lot faster. So we can really accelerate impact. So I'll give you an example of that. And for any development issues, I think we're going to need to get more sharper and sharper in terms of how we fight it. I just looked at data for 4 districts in Rajasthan and about 3,800 villages that have 30,000 out of school girls, of which you won't believe it, 20,000 of those girls are in 280 villages. Right? So the minute you have evidence, data, and this, I can immediately, hire 10 times more many people in those 280 villages, right? Versus somewhere else. So what we're doing is we're hoping that in the coming years, we could just make sure that our tools in our arsenal are so sharp that we can really accelerate towards that impact. But in terms of our 5-year plan, we're looking at doubling our outreach and tripling our impact to about 16 million children.
It's one big, hairy, audacious goal. I also know that, while you're helping the students, you're also helping the teachers actually, create a career trajectory for themselves, right? Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so our Team Balika volunteers, they're unpaid volunteers, and they really join us because they're mission driven. I mean, a lot of the women who join us saying, I know how hard it is because my parents were against my education. Or they will say, I got married early, I never got a chance, so that I want to give back. A lot of the men join saying, I want to do something for my village. And because they're giving so selflessly to this particular purpose, we invest a lot in their own career path. So soft skills training, entrepreneurship, modules that if they want to start their own business, they trained as teachers, so we certify that. They trained on classroom management, on delivering basic foundational skills, so that they can go off and get a job, connecting them to other partners for livelihoods, for skill development. And it's quite incredible. We're seeing young girls from like Jalore and districts which are like far out. These Team Balika volunteers in 2 years have stood for election and become sarpanch and ward panch. So we're seeing their movement really, really rapidly.
Very cool. So finally, how does all of this tie together for this audience? Like, how is this relevant to, how you would see this audience sort of making a change in their lives in some way to help this kind of a mission?
Yeah. I think we as individuals can do a bunch of different things. There's obviously, you can find and educate girls or other similar NGOs and make a donation and further the cause for girls' education in very, very remote and tribal areas where help is really needed. But I think more than that, our job is to keep fighting patriarchy and to keep fighting that mindset. Right? At the end of the day, like I said, because the problem is that it exists in our homes, it exists in our families, it exists in our work environments, in our society. And to A, be aware, have that gender lens, right? The more blind we are to it, the longer this problem will sort of continue. Like somebody comes to your door, your guest comes, who runs to open the door and who runs to get them a glass of water? Like challenge it, be cognizant of the gender imbalances in our daily life. In your boardroom, if you have all men sitting there, or if in your conference room, recognize it and raise your voice so that we can change this norm and we can create a new normal.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, quite honestly, it's been an honor speaking to her because this is likely one of the most important problems of our time to be solved, if not the most important. Girls' education. There's several research, several sort of strands of research that have gone into talking about the fact that if there's something that actually changes a sick society and makes things better, it is probably going to be the way that they actually go about treating and educating the women in that society. Thank you for doing that.